I wasn't supposed to remember dying, but I did. Every second, every breath I couldn't take, every word they threw at me like stones while I bled out on the marble floor of the pack house, choking on my own blood and the scent of my so-called family's indifference. Pathetic. That was the last thing my father said to me before my vision went black. Not "I'm sorry," not "I was wrong," just pathetic. And you know what? He was right. I was pathetic. I let them use me, beat me, starve me. I smiled through every slap, every sneer, every time my stepbrother shoved me into walls and called me a defective little breeder. I took it because I actually thought that if I was good enough, quiet enough, obedient enough, they'd finally see me as Pac. Spoiler alert, they didn't. They saw me as a tool, a womb with legs. And in an omega so weak I didn't even present a cent until I was 19, 3 years late. And when I finally did, when my heat hit me like a freight train in the middle of a pack meeting and my scent flooded the room, they laughed. My father looked at me like I was trash he forgot to take out. My stepmother smiled that sharp, cruel smile she reserved for when she was about to ruin my life. And my stepbrother, the one who spent years tormenting me, who once locked me in a basement for 2 days during a winter storm, he looked at me like I was a prize he'd already won. Finally useful, he'd said. That was 6 months ago. 6 months of hell. 6 months of being paraded in front of alpha families like livestock, inspected and dismissed. 6 months of my stepmother whispering poison into my father's ear, convincing him I was too damaged to fetch a good bond price. 6 months of my stepbrother's hands on me when no one was looking, his breath hot against my neck as he whispered all the things he'd do to me once I was his. And then one night, I fought back. I don't even know what came over me. Maybe it was the way he cornered me in the hallway, his fingers digging into my wrist hard enough to bruise. Maybe it was the way he smiled when I flinched. Maybe I was just tired. So I shoved him. Not hard, not violently. Just away from me. But he fell. His head cracked against the corner of a stone table, and suddenly there was blood. So much blood. And my stepmother was screaming, and my father was staring at me like I was a monster. "You killed him," she shrieked. "You murdered my son," I tried to explain. We tried to say it was an accident, but my father didn't care. He looked at me with those cold, empty eyes and said, "You've always been a curse." Then he walked away. They didn't even call a healer. They just left me there, with the body, with the blood, with the guards closing in, their faces twisted in disgust. I ran. I made it 3 miles before they caught me, dragged me back to the pack house, threw me in a cell, and waited for the council to decide my fate. My stepmother made sure everyone knew what a violent, unstable omega I was, how I'd always been jealous of her son, how I'd planned this. The trial lasted 10 minutes. The sentence was death. No bond, no mercy, no chance to explain that I'd spent my entire life trying not to be a burden, and the one time I defended myself, it cost me everything. I remember the executioner's blade. I remember my father's face in the crowd, blank, detached, like he was watching a stranger die. I remember thinking, this is it. This is how I go. Unloved, unwanted, forgotten. And then I woke up, not in the afterlife, not in some void or peaceful nothingness. I woke up in my childhood bedroom, the same narrow bed, the same cracked window that never quite closed, the same faded wallpaper I used to trace with my fingers when I couldn't sleep because my ribs hurt too much from where my stepbrother kicked me. I bolted upright, gasping, my hands flying to my throat, where the blade should have cut clean through. But there was nothing. No wound, no scar, just smooth, unmarked skin. My heart slammed against my ribs. My scent, lavender and rain, the same one that got me killed, curled around me like a ghost. This wasn't heaven. This wasn't hell. This was my room. The room I hadn't slept in since I was 17, since my stepmother decided I didn't deserve a space in the main house and had me moved to the servants' quarters. I looked down at my hands, smaller, younger. No calluses from years of scrubbing floors and pulling weeds in the pack gardens. A mirror hung on the wall, cracked, dusty, but still intact. I stumbled toward it, my legs shaking, and stared at the face looking back at me. 16. I was 16 again. My hair was shorter, my cheekbones softer. My eyes, still that same stormy gray, were wider, less haunted. I looked, God, I looked like a kid. A scared, fragile kid who didn't know yet how much the world was going to chew him up and spit him out. But I wasn't that kid anymore. I knew exactly what was coming. The beatings, the starvation, the humiliation, my late presentation, my stepbrother's hands, the trial, the execution, all of it. A laugh bubbled up in my throat, sharp, bitter, a little unhinged. I pressed my palm against the mirror, watching my reflection tremble. Okay, I whispered. Okay, so I'm back. I'm actually back. My mind raced. If I was 16 again, that meant I had 3 years. 3 years before my scent came in. 3 years before everything fell apart. 3 years to rewrite the ending. I didn't know how this happened. Didn't know if it was some cosmic joke or a second chance I didn't deserve. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't dying again. Not for them, not for anyone. This time I was going to survive. And if that meant burning this whole pack to the ground, well, I always did like fire. The thought barely crossed my mind before heat exploded in my chest. Sudden, violent, like someone cracked open my rib cage and poured molten lava straight into my lungs. I gasped, stumbling backward from the mirror. My hands flew up instinctively, and that's when I saw it. Flames. Actual, real, holy shit flames dancing across my palms like they belonged there. Orange and gold licking up my fingers, curling around my wrists in delicate spirals. They didn't burn, didn't hurt. They felt right. Like an extension of myself I'd been missing my entire life. Or lives, apparently. What the hell, I breathed, watching the fire flicker and pulse in time with my heartbeat. I flexed my fingers experimentally, and the flames grew brighter, hotter, casting wild shadows across the walls. This wasn't normal. Omegas didn't have powers. We had heats and scents and biological imperatives that made us valuable to packs. We didn't get pyrokinesis like some kind of comic book character. But here I was, 16 years old, freshly reborn from a death I absolutely remembered, standing in my childhood bedroom with fire in my hands and a very pressing question. Did I have this before? I searched my memories, the old ones, the ones soaked in blood and betrayal, but came up empty. No fire, no heat beyond the biological kind, just weakness, fragility, and a body that felt like it was designed to break. So either this was new, or I'd been too busy getting kicked around to notice I could literally set people on fire. I was betting on new. A slow smile crept across my face, and the flames in my palms flared brighter, reflecting in the cracked mirror, turning my gray eyes molten. Well, I said to my reflection, my voice steadier now, almost giddy. This changes things. I closed my fists, and the fire snuffed out instantly, leaving only the faint smell of smoke and the electric buzz of adrenaline under my skin. My heart was still racing, but not from fear anymore, from possibility. If I could do this, if I had actual power now, then I wasn't just some defenseless Omega waiting to be crushed under the pack's heel. I was a threat, a variable they wouldn't see coming, and God, did that feel good. I turned toward the door, my mind already spinning with plans. First things first, I needed to figure out exactly when I was, what day, what month, how much time I had before everything started falling apart. I crossed the small room in 3 steps and eased the door open, listening. The house was quiet, no footsteps, no voices, just the low hum of the pack house settling into night. Good. That meant I could move without being seen. I slipped into the hallway, keeping my steps light. The floor was cold under my bare feet, and the air smelled like old wood and the faint, bitter scent of my stepmother's favorite tea. Everything looked exactly as I remembered. Same ugly floral wallpaper, same creaky floorboards, same portrait of my father hanging at the end of the hall like some kind of judgmental ghost. I resisted the urge to set it on fire. Barely. Instead, I crept toward the staircase, my senses on high alert. I needed information. a calendar, a newspaper, anything that would tell me exactly where I was in the timeline. But as I reached the top of the stairs, a voice cut through the silence like a blade. Going somewhere? I froze. My stepbrother stood at the bottom of the staircase, arms crossed, leaning against the banister like he owned the place, which technically he thought he did. Damien, the same sharp jawline, the same cold blue eyes, the same smug, predatory smile that made my skin crawl. Alive. Of course he was alive. This was 3 years before I shoved him into that table. 3 years before his blood pooled on marble and my life ended. But standing here now, looking down at him, all I felt was rage. Didn't realize I needed permission to walk around my own house, I said, keeping my voice flat, bored. His smile widened. Your house? He pushed off the banister and started climbing the stairs, slow and deliberate. That's funny. Choi, last I checked, you're just the bastard Omega Father got stuck with. You don't own anything here. There it was. That word. Bastard. He loved throwing it at me, loved reminding me that I wasn't really Pac, that my mother, whoever she was, had been nothing more than a mistake my father regretted. In my first life, I would have flinched, looked away, apologized even, just to make him leave me alone. But I wasn't that Omega anymore. I tilted my head, letting a slow, sharp smile curl across my lips. You're right. I don't own anything here. I took a step down, closing the distance between us. But neither do you. Not yet, anyway. So maybe climb down off that high horse before you fall and crack your skull open. His eyes narrowed. For a split second, something dangerous flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or anger. He wasn't used to me talking back. Wasn't used to me having a spine. Good, let him be confused. What's gotten into you? He asked, his voice dropping lower, quieter. He was close enough now that I could smell him. Pine and leather, and something sharp, possessive. Alpha scent. It used to make me nauseous. Now it just made me want to punch him. Nothing, I said sweetly. Just grew a sense of humor. You should try it sometime. He stared at me for a long moment, his jaw tightening. Then he laughed. Short, harsh, humorless. You've got a mouth on you tonight. He leaned in, his breath hot against my ear. Be careful, little Omega. That kind of attitude gets people hurt. My pulse kicked up, not from fear, but from the sheer effort it took not to let the fire under my skin explode outward and turn him into a very surprised pile of ash. And instead, I smiled wider. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Cool. I patted his chest condescendingly, feeling the heat in my palm flare just enough to make him flinch. I'll add it to the list. Then I brushed past him, heading down the stairs, leaving him standing there like an idiot. My hands were shaking by the time I reached the bottom, but not from fear, from control, because I could have burned him, right there, right then. But I didn't, not yet. The words echoed in my head as I walked through the darkened pack house, my bare feet silent against the cold hardwood. My hands were still trembling, heat pulsing just beneath the surface of my skin like a second heartbeat. I clenched my fists, forcing the fire down, burying it somewhere deep where it couldn't accidentally turn the curtains into kindling. Control. I needed control and information. I slipped into my father's study, easing the door shut behind me. The room smelled like old leather and expensive whiskey, the kind he only poured for visiting alphas he wanted to impress. Moonlight filtered through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the massive oak desk that dominated the space. This was his kingdom, his throne room, the place where he made decisions that affected the entire pack, and somehow never once considered that I might matter. I moved toward the desk, scanning the surface. Papers, letters, a half-empty glass with amber liquid still clinging to the sides. And there, buried under a stack of pack financial reports, a calendar. I grabbed it, flipping it open. October 14th. My breath caught. October. I was 16. Ashom, which meant I had exactly 2 years and 7 months before my heat came in. 2 years and 7 months before Damien's hands got bolder, before my stepmother's cruelty escalated, before everything spiraled into blood and execution. 2 years and 7 months to change everything. I set the calendar down, my mind racing. If I played this smart, I could avoid the worst of it. Stay under the radar. Keep my head down until I was old enough to leave. Maybe find sanctuary with a different pack or disappear into one of the human cities where pack law didn't reach. But even as I thought it, something hot and bitter twisted in my chest. Run? Again? I died running. Died begging for mercy I never got. Died believing I deserved the suffering because I wasn't strong enough. Wasn't good enough. Wasn't enough. Screw that. I didn't come back from the dead just to spend another 2 years being someone's punching bag. I came back with fire in my veins and a score to settle. If they wanted a weak, obedient Omega, they were going to be severely disappointed. A soft sound behind me made me freeze. Footsteps, slow, deliberate. I turned, my heart kicking into overdrive, and found my father standing in the doorway. Alpha Magnus Hale, tall, broad-shouldered, with gray-streaked hair and eyes like frozen steel. He looked exactly as I remembered, intimidating, distant, untouchable, the kind of man who could look at his own son bleeding on the floor and feel nothing. He stared at me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "What are you doing in here?" His voice was low, controlled. Not angry, not yet. I straightened, keeping my face carefully blank. Couldn't sleep. "So you broke into my study?" "The door was unlocked." "Technically true, it wasn't locked, just closed." His jaw tightened. "You know you're not supposed to be in here." "Yeah, well," I shrugged, letting a hint of defiance creep into my tone. "I'm full of surprises tonight." His eyes narrowed. For a moment, I thought he might actually lose his temper, might grab me by the collar and throw me out like he used to. But instead, he just studied me, his gaze sharp, assessing. "You're different," he said finally. My stomach dropped, but I kept my expression neutral. "Different how?" "I don't know yet." He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. The sound of the latch clicking into place felt too loud, too final. "But you don't speak to me like this. You don't look at me like this." "Like what?" "Like you're not afraid of me." Oh, I should have been more careful. Should have played the part better. But standing here looking at the man who watched me die without flinching, I couldn't bring myself to cower. "Maybe I'm just tired," I said, keeping my voice light. "Tired of being invisible. Tired of being treated like I don't matter." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or suspicion. "You matter," he said, though the words sounded hollow, rehearsed. "You're part of this pack." I laughed. I couldn't help it. The sound came out bitter, sharp, and his expression darkened. "Something funny?" "Yeah, actually." I crossed my arms, meeting his gaze head-on. "You just said I matter, but you can't even remember the last time you looked at me. Really looked at me. Not as an obligation or a mistake, but as your son." The air between us went cold. "Watch your tone," he said quietly, dangerously. "Or what?" The words slipped out before I could stop them, reckless and sharp. "You'll ignore me harder? Lock me in the basement again?" "Oh, wait, that was Damien. But you knew about it, didn't you?" His face went stone still. "Bingo. You don't know what you're talking about," he said, but his voice wavered, just slightly. "Don't I?" I took a step closer, my hands curling into fists at my sides. Heat prickled under my skin, begging to be released. "I know you let Damien do whatever he wants to me because it's easier than dealing with him. I know you let her poison you against me because you never wanted me in the first place. I know you think I'm weak." "You are weak." The words came out flat, utter automatic, like he'd said them so many times he didn't even have to think about it anymore. And God, it should have hurt. Should have cut deep the way it used to. But all I felt was anger. "Then why are you scared of me?" I asked softly. He blinked. "I'm not." "You are." I smiled, slow and sharp. "You've been scared of me since the moment you walked in here and realized I wasn't the same pathetic kid you left bleeding in the hallway last month." His hand twitched toward me, and for a split second I thought he might actually hit me. But he didn't. Instead, he stepped back, his expression carefully controlled, and said, "Go to bed." "Gladly." I walked past him, shoulder brushing his, and felt the heat in my palms flare just enough to leave a faint scorch mark on the doorframe as I passed. He didn't notice, but I did, and I smiled the entire way back to my room. The hallway stretched ahead of me, dimly lit by the moonlight filtering through the tall windows. My footsteps were silent, careful, but my heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst right out of my chest. Not from fear, from exhilaration. I just stood up to my father. Actually stood up to him, and he'd back down. The rush of it was intoxicating, but the high didn't last long. Well, well, look who's sneaking around in the middle of the night. I stopped dead in my tracks. My stepmother stood at the end of the hallway, backlit by the soft glow of a lamp from one of the guest rooms. Victoria Hale, tall, elegant, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a smile that could cut glass. She wore a silk robe that probably cost more than most people's cars, and her pale blue eyes were fixed on me with the kind of predatory focus that made my skin crawl. In my first life, I'd been terrified of her. She was the one who whispered poison into my father's ear, who made sure every mistake I made was magnified, every success I had was diminished. She was the architect of my suffering, and she did it all with a smile. But looking at her now, all I felt was cold, burning rage. Couldn't sleep, I said, keeping my voice neutral. She tilted her head, studying me like I was a particularly interesting insect. Neither could I. Funny how that works. She started walking toward me, her slippers whispering against the floor. Every step was deliberate, calculated. She moved like a predator, and I was supposed to be prey. Not anymore. I heard voices, she continued. Henri stopping a few feet away from me. Coming from Magnus's study. Imagine my surprise when I realized one of them was yours. Is that illegal now? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Talking to my own father? Her smile sharpened. Don't play coy with me, Elias. You know you're not supposed to be in there. And yet here you are, wandering around like you own the place. She crossed her arms, her gaze dropping to my hands. What were you doing? Nothing. Nothing. She repeated the word slowly, like she was tasting it. You expect me to believe that? I don't really care what you believe. The words came out before I could stop them, sharp and reckless. Her eyes widened, just slightly, and for a moment I saw something flicker across her face. Shock, anger, maybe even a hint of fear. Good. Excuse me, her voice dropped, cold and dangerous. I should have backed down, should have apologized, played the obedient Omega, made myself small and unthreatening. That's what I would have done before, but I wasn't that person anymore. You heard me, I said, taking a step closer. I don't care what you believe. I don't care what you think. And I definitely don't care about whatever twisted little game you're playing. Her jaw tightened. You're upset. I understand. It's been a difficult few months for you, what with your late presentation and all the complications that come with it. Her tone was syrupy sweet, condescending. But you need to remember your place. My place. I laughed, the sound bitter and sharp. Right. Because you've done such a great job reminding me of it. Tell me, Victoria, does it ever get exhausting? Pretending to care about this pack when all you really care about is making sure Damien inherits everything? Her expression went ice cold. Watch your mouth. Or what? You'll tell my father I'm being disrespectful? Go ahead. I'm sure he'll be thrilled to hear about it. Oh, wait, he already knows. I just had a lovely conversation with him about how much he values me as his son. That was a lie. Well, mostly. But she didn't need to know that. Her eyes narrowed. What did you say to him? Wouldn't you like to know? She stepped closer, and I could smell her now. Roses and something sharper, chemical, perfume meant to cover up the bitterness underneath. You think you're clever, she said softly. You think you can just waltz back into this house and start making demands? Start acting like you matter. But you don't. You're nothing. Elias, you're a mistake your father has been too kind to correct. The words should have hurt, should have dug into all the old wounds and made them bleed again. But they didn't, because I knew the truth. I knew how this story ended. I knew that in 2 years, she'd stand in front of a council and accuse me of murder, and my father would let her, and I'd die because of it. But that wasn't going to happen this time. You're right, I said, my voice calm, steady. I am nothing. Just a weak, pathetic Omega who doesn't know his place. I let a slow smile spread across my face. But here's the thing, Victoria. Nothing has nothing to lose. And that makes me a lot more dangerous than you think. Her hand shot out, fast as a snake, and grabbed my wrist. Her grip was tight, painful, her nails digging into my skin. What, you think you can threaten me? Heat flared under my skin, sharp and immediate. I felt it gathering in my palm, felt the fire begging to be released, to turn her hand into ash. But I didn't let it. Not yet. Instead, I looked down at her hand, then back up at her face. I'm not threatening you, I'm warning you. I twisted my wrist, breaking her grip with a sharp yank that made her stumble back a step. Stay out of my way and I'll stay out of yours. But if you come after me again, if you try to hurt me or set me up, or poison my father against me one more time, I let the sentence hang, unfinished, dangerous. Her face was pale now, her chest rising and falling quickly. You wouldn't dare. Try me. We stared at each other for a long, tense moment. The air between us crackled with unspoken threats, surely with the weight of everything we weren't saying. She was trying to figure me out, trying to understand what had changed, why I wasn't cowering the way I used to. And I could see the exact moment she made her decision. Her expression smoothed out, the anger melting away into something worse, something calculated. You've made a mistake tonight, Elias, she said quietly. A very big mistake. Yeah? I tilted my head. Add it to the list. She turned and walked away, her footsteps sharp and deliberate against the floor. But just before she disappeared around the corner, she paused and looked back at me. Sleep well, she said, her smile razor sharp. You're going to need your strength. Then she was gone. I stood there for a moment, my heart pounding, my hands still trembling with the effort of keeping the fire inside. She was going to come after me. I knew that. She was going to set something up, frame me for something, make my life hell in ways I couldn't even predict yet. But that was fine, because this time I'd see it coming, and this time I'd be ready. I turned back toward my room, adrenaline still buzzing under my skin like electricity. My hands were shaking again, but not from fear, from fury, from the sheer effort it took not to chase after Victoria and show her exactly what happened to people who threatened me. But I forced myself to walk, slow, steady, like I had all the time in the world. I was 3 steps from my door when I smelled it. Smoke, not the familiar, controlled burn of my own fire. This was different, acrid, chemical, wrong. My door was cracked open, and thin tendrils of gray smoke were curling out from the gap, or drifting into the hallway like ghostly fingers. My heart dropped straight into my stomach. I shoved the door open. Flames. My room was on fire. Real fire, not the kind I could control. It crawled up the curtains, devoured the old wooden bed frame, licked across the walls in hungry, chaotic waves. The heat hit me like a physical force, stealing the air from my lungs. And there, in the center of the room, was a candle, overturned, deliberately placed on a pile of my clothes, still burning. She did this, Victoria. It had to be. She'd walked away from our confrontation, gone straight to my room, and set it on fire. And when the pack house woke up, when my father came running, she'd blame me. Say I was unstable, dangerous, that I'd tried to burn the place down, just like she'd blame me for Damien's death 2 years from now. Except this time, I wasn't going to let her win. I stepped into the room, ignoring the smoke that clawed at my throat, and raised my hands. The fire inside me surged to life, hot and eager, and I reached out with it, pulling at the flames. They resisted at first, wild and uncontrolled, but I gritted my teeth and pulled harder. Come on, come on. The fire bent, twisted, and then, slowly, it started to obey. I drew it toward me, gathering it into my palms, condensing it, compressing it until the roaring inferno was nothing more than a handful of flickering embers. My entire body shook with the effort, sweat dripping down my spine. But I didn't stop. Not until every last flame was gone, absorbed into my skin like it had never existed. The room fell silent, charred, ruined, but not burning anymore. I stood there gasping, my hands still glowing faintly with residual heat, and stared at the destruction. My bed was half ash. The curtains were gone. The walls were blackened and blistered, but I was alive, and I had proof. Footsteps pounded down the hallway. Voices shouted. The smell of smoke must have reached the rest of the house. Perfect. I turned just as my father burst through the door, Damien and Victoria right behind him. They all froze, staring at me, at the room, at the candle still sitting in the middle of the floor. What the hell happened? My father demanded, his voice sharp, furious. I opened my mouth to answer, but Victoria beat me to it. Oh my God, she gasped, pressing a hand to her chest, her eyes wide with perfectly manufactured horror. Elias, what did you do? I almost laughed. What did I do? I repeated slowly, letting the words hang in the air. Funny, I was about to ask you the same thing. Her expression flickered, just for a second, but it was enough. What are you talking about? She said, her voice trembling. We heard the alarm. We came running, and you're just standing here in a burned room. What were you thinking? I was thinking, I said calmly, that it's pretty convenient how this fire started right after you threatened me in the hallway. Her face went pale. I did no such thing. Really? Because I'm pretty sure you told me I made a mistake tonight, that I'd need my strength. I looked at my father, meeting his gaze head on. And then, 5 minutes later, my room is on fire, with a candle that definitely wasn't there when I left. That's ridiculous, Victoria snapped. You're trying to frame me because you got caught doing something reckless. If I wanted to burn something down, I said, my voice cold, trust me, you'd know. Damien stepped forward, his eyes narrowed. Are you threatening my mother? No, I smiled. I'm just stating facts. My father's jaw tightened. He looked between me and Victoria, his expression unreadable. Everyone out, now. But Magnus, Victoria started. Out. She hesitated, then turned and swept out of the room, Damien following close behind. But not before he shot me a look that promised retribution. I didn't care. My father waited until they were gone, then turned to me. Explain. She set the fire, I said simply. She came to my room after we talked, overturned a candle, and left. She wanted to make it look like I did it. Like I'm dangerous. And you put it out. It wasn't a question. Yeah. How? I paused. This was the moment. The moment I either lied and kept my power hidden, or told the truth and risked everything. But if I was going to survive this, if I was going to change the way this story ended, I couldn't keep hiding. I controlled it, I said quietly. I have abilities. Fire. I can manipulate it. He stared at me for a long, silent moment. Then slowly he nodded. Show me. I blinked. What? Show me. I hesitated, then raised my hand. Heat gathered in my palm and a small flame flickered to life, dancing across my fingers. It was controlled, precise, beautiful. My father's eyes widened. How long? He asked. Since tonight. I closed my fist, snuffing out the flame. I didn't have this before. I don't know why I have it now, but I do. He was quiet for a long time. Then finally he said, This changes things. Does it? He looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time in my entire life, I saw something other than disappointment in his eyes. Respect. An omega with power, he murmured. The other packs will want you. The council will want to study you. And the Alpha Kings, he trailed off, his expression darkening. What about them? Before he could answer, a howl split the night. Long, low, powerful, the kind of howl that made every wolf in the territory freeze and listen. My father's face went stone still. They're here. Who? He looked at me, and for the first time I saw something that looked almost like fear. The Triplet Alpha Kings. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. And I'd heard of them, of course. Everyone had. 3 brothers who ruled the largest pack territory in North America. Ruthless, powerful, untouchable. They didn't visit smaller packs unless something serious was happening, unless someone had broken pack law or threatened the balance of power, or unless they wanted something. Why are they here, Ma? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. My father didn't answer. He just turned and walked toward the door, his shoulders tense, his movements sharp and controlled. Stay here. Like hell. He stopped, glancing back at me with an expression that might have been warning or might have been resignation. Elias, If they're here because of me, I deserve to know. I crossed my arms, ignoring the way my hands were still trembling. Besides, you just said this changes things. One, so let's see how much. For a moment, I thought he'd argue, thought he'd pull rank, order me to stay put like the obedient Omega I was supposed to be, but he didn't. He just nodded once, sharp and final, and said, "Don't speak unless spoken to." "Sure," I lied. We walked through the pack house together, and I could feel the shift in the air. Other pack members were waking up, stumbling into the hallways, their faces pale and confused. The howl had done its job. Everyone knew something big was happening. Victoria was waiting at the top of the main staircase, her face a perfect mask of concern. Damien stood beside her, his expression smug, like he thought whatever was about to happen would work in his favor. Idiots. My father descended the stairs without a word, and I followed, keeping my chin up, my posture straight. And I wasn't going to cower. Not anymore. The front doors were already open. 3 figures stood in the entryway, backlit by the moonlight, their silhouettes sharp and imposing. The air around them felt heavy, charged, like the moment before a lightning strike. Power radiated off them in waves, so thick I could almost taste it. Alpha's scent hit me next. 3 distinct threads woven together into something overwhelming. The first was cold, sharp, like winter wind and steel. The second was wild, dangerous, like smoke and storms and violence barely held in check. The third was warm, steady, like sun-warmed earth, and something softer, something I couldn't quite name. And underneath it all, woven through every breath, was a pull I shouldn't have felt. A pull that made my wolf, dormant and silent for 16 years, suddenly sit up and pay attention. Mate, no, not possible. I wasn't supposed to present for another 2 years. I didn't have a scent yet. I didn't have heats. I was just a kid, biologically speaking, and mate bonds didn't form until after presentation. But my body didn't care about logic. My wolf didn't care about timelines. It knew. And apparently, so did they. The first brother stepped forward, and the lamplight finally caught his face. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair that fell just past his jaw, and eyes the color of storm clouds. He moved like a predator, controlled and deliberate, and when his gaze landed on me, I felt it like a physical touch. "Alpha Magnus," he said, his voice low and smooth. "We apologize for the late hour." My father inclined his head, respectful but not submissive. "Alpha Cain, to what do we owe the honor?" Cain. So that was his name. The second brother moved to stand beside him, and where Cain was controlled, this one was chaos. Taller, leaner, with wild auburn hair and eyes that burned gold in the dim light. He looked like he was 2 seconds away from starting a fight just for fun. "We felt something," the second brother said, his voice rougher, edged with something feral. "A disturbance. Power. Coming from this territory." The third brother was last. He was quieter, his movements slower, more deliberate. Dark skin, close-cropped hair, and deep brown eyes that seemed to see straight through me. He didn't speak, but his presence was just as commanding as the others. My father's jaw tightened. "I don't know what you're referring to." "Don't you?" Cain's gaze slid past him, landing squarely on me. Every instinct I had screamed at me to look away, to lower my eyes, to submit. I didn't. I stared right back. His eyebrows lifted, just slightly. Surprise, or maybe amusement. "And who is this?" he asked, though something in his tone told me he already knew. "My son," my father said stiffly. "Elias." "Elias," Cain repeated, like he was testing the name. His gaze raked over me, assessing, calculating. "An Omega. A late bloomer," Victoria cut in smoothly, stepping forward with that saccharine smile of hers. "He hasn't presented yet. 16 and still nothing. We've been concerned." I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from saying something I'd regret. The second brother, the wild one, tilted his head. "Hasn't presented." He took a step closer, his nostrils flaring slightly. "That's interesting." "What? Because he smells like an Omega to me." My stomach dropped. "No, no, no, no. I shouldn't have a scent yet. I didn't have a scent before. Not until I was 19. Not until my heat came in and ruined everything. But maybe dying and coming back changed the rules. I don't know what you're talking about, I said, keeping my voice steady. I don't have a cent. The third brother finally spoke, his voice deep and quiet. You do. He moved closer, his gaze never leaving mine. Faint, undeveloped, but there. Lavender, the wild one added, grinning like he just won something. And rain. Cain's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes, something dark and possessive. Rare for an Omega to present a scent before their heat. Rare, the quiet one agreed, but not unheard of, especially for those with unusual circumstances. They knew, somehow they knew I was different, that I had power, that I wasn't just some random Omega in a backwater pack, and they weren't here by accident. We'd like to speak with him, Cain said, still looking at me, privately. Absolutely not, my father said, his voice hard. It wasn't a request. The air went cold, tense, dangerous. My father's hands curled into fists at his sides, but he didn't move, couldn't move, because challenging the Triplet Alpha Kings was suicide, and we both knew it. It's fine, I said, surprised by how calm I sounded. I'll talk to them. Elias, my father started. I said it's fine. I looked at him, at the worry in his eyes, the fear, and something inside me softened. Just a little. I'll be okay. He didn't look convinced, but he nodded. Cain's lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. Smart Omega. Don't call me that, I said flatly. The wild one laughed, sharp and delighted. Oh, I like him. The quiet one just watched me, his expression unreadable. And as they turned to lead me away from the pack house, away from my father and Victoria and Damien, and everyone who'd ever hurt me, I felt it again. That pull, that impossible, undeniable pull. Mate, all three of them. Well, this just got complicated. They led me outside, away from the pack house, away from the prying eyes and nervous whispers. The night air was cool against my skin, a sharp contrast to the heat still simmering under my surface. We walked in silence, their footsteps confident and synchronized, a mind carefully measured to hide the fact that my heart was trying to jackhammer its way out of my chest. We stopped at the edge of the territory, where the manicured lawn gave way to wild forest. Moonlight filtered through the trees, casting everything in silver and shadow. Cain turned to face me first, his expression unreadable. You're not afraid. It wasn't a question. Should I be? I asked, tilting my head. The wild one, the one with auburn hair and gold eyes, grinned. Most Omegas would be shaking right now. Crying, maybe. Definitely submitting. Good thing I'm not most Omegas then. His grin widened. No, you're really not. The quiet one moved to stand beside me, not touching, but close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating off him. He didn't speak, just watched me with those deep, assessing eyes. It should have been intimidating. Three of the most powerful alphas in the country, surrounding me in the middle of the night, far from anyone who could help if things went wrong. But I didn't feel threatened. I felt seen. What's your name? I asked the wild one, mostly because the silence was starting to make my skin itch. He blinked, surprised, then laughed. You don't know who we are? I know you're the Triplet Alpha Kings. I know you're powerful. I know you probably have 1,000 better things to do than show up at a random pack territory in the middle of the night. I crossed my arms. But I don't know your names. So, what are they? Cain's lips twitched, almost a smile. Cain, he said, gesturing to himself. Then he nodded to the wild one. Ryker, and finally to the quiet one. Dante. Cool, I'm Elias. But you already knew that. Ryker's eyes gleamed with amusement. You're fun. I like fun. I'm thrilled, I said dryly. Dante finally spoke, his voice low and calm. You have power. Straight to the point, then. I considered lying, considered playing dumb, pretending I didn't know what he was talking about. But what was the point? They'd felt it. That's why they were here. And something told me these three didn't waste time on people who lied to them. Yeah, I said. I do. What kind? Cain asked, his gaze sharp. Fire. Ryker whistled, low and impressed. Fire. That's rare for an Omega. Hell, that's rare for anyone. Tell me about it. I flex my fingers, feeling the heat stir beneath my skin. It's new. Like tonight new. I woke up and suddenly I could do this. I raised my hand, letting a small flame flicker to life in my palm. Controlled. Precise. No idea why. No idea how. But here we are. All three of them stared at the flame, their expressions ranging from fascination to hunger. Show us more, Cain said. It wasn't a request, but it wasn't quite a command either. More like a challenge. Fine. I could work with that. I closed my fist, snuffing out the flame, then opened both hands. Fire erupted from my palms, twin pillars of orange and gold that climbed into the air, twisting and curling like living things. I felt the heat, the power, the rush of controlling something that should have been wild and destructive, and I felt their eyes on me, watching, waiting. I pulled the fire back, condensing it, shaping it into a sphere that hovered between my hands. Then, just because I could, I made it spin. Mike is satisfied, I asked, letting the fire dissolve into nothing. Ryker let out a breathless laugh. Oh, you're perfect. I'm really not. You are, Dante said quietly. An omega with power, a scent that called to us from miles away, and a spine made of steel. His gaze bore into mine. You're exactly what we've been looking for. My stomach twisted. Looking for? Cain stepped closer, and I had to tilt my head back to keep eye contact. We felt your power awaken, felt the shift in the balance, and we came to see if the rumors were true. What rumors? That an omega had been reborn. The world tilted. What? The word came out strangled, barely audible. You died, Cain said, his voice soft, almost gentle. Recently, violently, and somehow you came back. Younger, stronger, she with abilities you didn't have before. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. How do you know that? Because we can smell it on you, Dante said. Death, second chances, the scent of someone who's walked through fire and refused to burn. Ryker tilted his head, his grin fading into something more serious. You're not the first. There are stories, legends, omegas who died unjustly and were given another chance. They always come back with power, always come back with a purpose. And they always, Cain added, his gaze locking onto mine, find their true mates. Oh no. You think I'm your mate? I said flatly. We don't think, Dante said. We know. All three of you. Yes. I laughed. I couldn't help it. The sound came out sharp and a little hysterical. That's insane. I'm 16. I haven't even presented. What, and you're telling me I'm somehow bonded to 3 Alpha Kings I just met? The bond doesn't care about age or logic, Cain said. It cares about fate. Fate can go screw itself. Ryker snorted. I really do like him. I'm serious, I said, my voice rising. I didn't come back from the dead just to get claimed by 3 alphas I don't know. I came back to survive, to get justice, to make sure the people who hurt me never get the chance to do it again. And we can help you, Dante said. I don't need help. Yes, Cain said, his tone firm. You do. Because whatever happened to you before, whatever killed you, it's going to happen again. And this time, you won't see it coming. A chill ran down my spine. What are you talking about? Before any of them could answer, a scream split the night. High, terrified. Coming from the pack house, I didn't think. I just ran. And all three of them were right behind me. My feet hit the ground hard, faster than I'd ever moved before. The pack house loomed ahead, lights blazing in windows that had been dark moments ago. The scream came again, closer now, raw and panicked. I burst through the front doors. Chaos. Pack members crowded the entryway, some still in their sleep clothes, all of them staring at something I couldn't see yet. Their faces were pale, shocked, horrified. The air reeked of fear and something else, something metallic. Blood. I shoved through the crowd, ignoring the hands that tried to grab me, the voices that told me to stop. And then I saw it. Damien. He was on the floor, crumpled at the base of the stairs, his head twisted at an angle that made my stomach lurch. A blood pooled beneath him, dark and spreading, soaking into the expensive carpet Victoria was always so proud of. Dead. just like before. Except this time I didn't push him. This time I wasn't even there. Victoria stood over him, her hands covered in blood, her face a mask of theatrical grief. She was sobbing, loud and dramatic, her whole body shaking. No, no, no! My baby! My son! My father was beside her, trying to pull her back, his face ashen, and every single person in that room was looking at me. You! Victoria choked out, lifting one trembling, blood-soaked finger to point directly at me. You did this! You killed him! The accusation hit like a physical blow. What? I breathed. You threatened him earlier, she continued, her voice rising, cracking with false anguish. You said you'd make him pay, and now he's dead. What, you murdered my son? The crowd murmured, shifting, their eyes darting between me and Damien's body. Doubt, suspicion, fear. This was it. This was the setup. She'd move faster than I expected, change the timeline, but the trap was the same. Frame me for murder, turn the pack against me, get me executed. Except this time I had witnesses. I was outside, Jan, I said, my voice steady despite the fury boiling in my chest. I've been outside for the past 20 minutes. With them. I gestured to the three alphas standing behind me, their presence a wall of silent, intimidating power. Victoria's eyes widened, just slightly. She hadn't expected that. They're lying to protect you, she spat. You're an Omega. You manipulated them somehow, used your scent, your heat. I don't have a heat, I cut her off. And even if I did, do you really think three Alpha Kings would lie for some random Omega they just met? Cain stepped forward, his expression cold and lethal. Choose your next words very carefully. Victoria's face went white. The Omega was with us, Dante said, his voice quiet but absolute. The entire time. He couldn't have done this. Ryker crouched beside Damien's body, his expression shifting from amused to something darker, sharper. He tilted his head, studying the wound, the angle, the blood spatter. Then he looked up at Victoria. This wasn't a fall, he said. The room went silent. What? My father's voice cracked. Ryker stood, wiping his hands on his pants. The injury is wrong. If he fell down the stairs, the impact point would be different. The blood pattern would be different. He looked at Victoria, his gold eyes gleaming. This was blunt force trauma. Someone hit him, hard, from behind. Victoria's sob caught in her throat. And, Dante added, moving closer to examine the scene, there are defensive wounds on his hands. He fought back, which means he knew his attacker. My father took a step back from Victoria, his face draining of color. What are you saying? I'm saying, Cain said, his voice cutting through the shock like a blade, that she killed him. The words hung in the air, heavy and damning. Victoria's expression crumbled, the grief melting away into something colder, sharper. That's absurd. I would never. You would, I said quietly. All eyes turned to me. You would, because he was a liability, because I didn't fall for your trap, because you needed someone dead to pin on me, and he was convenient. Her jaw tightened. Yeah, you have no proof. Don't I? I stepped closer, my hands curling into fists. You threatened me in the hallway, told me I made a mistake. Then you set my room on fire, hoping I'd either die or get blamed for arson. When that didn't work, you needed a backup plan, so you killed your own son and framed me for it. That's insane, she shrieked. Is it? Ryker's grin was sharp, dangerous. Because there's blood on your hands. Literally. She looked down as if just realizing, and her face went slack with panic. I touched him. I was trying to help. There's blood under your nails, Dante said, his tone clinical, and on your robe. Splatter patterns suggest you were standing over him when the blow landed. My father staggered back, his hand covering his mouth. Victoria! Don't listen to them, she snapped, desperation creeping into her voice. They're trying to protect him. He's a monster, Magnus. He has powers. Fire. I saw it. He burned his own room, and now he's killed Damien, and enough. The word came from my father, low and broken. He looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw the moment belief shattered. You killed him. You killed our son. He wasn't our son, she hissed, the mask finally slipping completely. He was mine, and he was weak, just like you, just like this pathetic excuse for a pack. She turned her glare on me, venomous and hateful. I should have killed you years ago, should have smothered you in your sleep when you were still too small to fight back. The confession hung in the air, raw and ugly. Cain moved so fast I barely saw it. One moment he was beside me, the next he had Victoria by the throat, lifting her off the ground like she weighed nothing. His eyes had gone completely black, his alpha presence flooding the room with enough pressure to make every wolf in the vicinity drop to their knees. You just confessed to attempted murder, he said, his voice glacial, in front of 3 Alpha Kings and an entire pack, which means your life is now forfeit. Wait, I said. Everyone looked at me. I stepped forward, meeting Victoria's terrified gaze. I want her to stand trial, in front of the council. I want everyone to hear what she did, what she's been doing, not just to me, but to this entire pack. Cain's grip loosened, just slightly. You don't want her dead? Oh, I do, I said honestly. But I want her to suffer first. I want her to lose everything the way she tried to make me lose everything. I want justice, real justice, not just revenge. Cain studied me for a long moment. Then slowly, he lowered Victoria to the ground, though he didn't release her. Your call, Omega. Don't call me that, I said automatically. Ryker laughed, bright and delighted. I'm keeping him. Dante's hand landed on my shoulder, warm and grounding. So are we. And despite everything, despite the body on the floor and the blood in the chaos, I felt something shift inside me. Safe. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, I felt safe. The council trial happened 3 days later. Victoria stood in chains before the assembled alphas of every major pack in the region, her perfect mask shattered beyond repair. They listened as witness after witness came forward. Pack members who'd seen her cruelty, servants who'd heard her plans, even my father, broken and hollow, testified against her. When they asked me to speak, I told them everything. The abuse, the starvation, the fire, Damien's death, my death in another timeline that only I remembered. I didn't mention the rebirth, didn't mention the fire in my veins, or the bond pulling me toward 3 alphas who watched from the front row like avenging angels. Some secrets were mine to keep. The verdict was unanimous: exile, stripped of rank, title, and pack affiliation. Victoria would live, but she'd live as nothing, belonging nowhere, wanted by no one. As the guards dragged her away, she looked at me one last time. No hatred in her eyes anymore, just emptiness. I felt nothing watching her go. No satisfaction, no relief. Just the quiet certainty that this chapter was finally closed. My father approached me after the trial, his shoulders slumped, his eyes red-rimmed. Elias, don't, I said softly. I know what you're going to say, and I don't want to hear it. I failed you, his voice cracked. I let her hurt you. I stood by and did nothing while you suffered, and I can never take that back. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a broken man. Not a monster, not a villain. Just someone who'd made terrible choices and would have to live with them. No, I agreed. You can't take it back. But you testified. You told the truth when it mattered. That's something. Is it enough? I don't know yet. I took a breath. But maybe someday it could be a start. He nodded, tears streaming down his face, and walked away. I watched him go and felt something loosen in my chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe eventually the possibility of it. You ready? Ryker's voice came from behind me, warm and familiar. I turned to find all 3 of them waiting. Cain, tall and composed in a dark suit that made him look like he could run the world. Dante, quiet and steady, his presence a calm anchor. And Ryker, grinning like he'd just won the lottery, his wild energy barely contained. Ready for what? I asked. To come home, Cain said simply. Home. The word shouldn't have hit me as hard as it did. But my throat tightened, my eyes burned, and suddenly I was fighting back tears I didn't know I had left. I don't have a home, I whispered. Yes, Dante said, stepping closer. You do. With us. I'm 16. I'm not even fully presented. I have fire powers I barely understand, and trauma I haven't begun to process. You don't want me. When you want some idealized version of an Omega mate who has their life together. Ryker laughed, bright and honest. Are you kidding? You're a sassy, fire-wielding phoenix who came back from the dead, stood up to his abusers, and chose justice over revenge. You're literally perfect. I'm a mess. So are we, Cain said, his lips quirking into an almost smile. Ryker starts fights for fun. Dante hasn't slept properly in 3 years. And I have control issues that would make a therapist weep. We're all disasters. We can be disasters together. I looked between the three of them, searching for the lie, the catch, the moment they'd realize I wasn't worth the trouble. But all I saw was certainty, patience, and something that looked terrifyingly like love. The bond, I said carefully. It's real, isn't it? Not just something you're saying to make me feel better. It's real, Dante confirmed. We felt it the moment your power awakened. Felt you calling to us across miles of territory. And when we saw you, he trailed off, his expression softening. We knew. All three of you? That's even possible? Ryker shrugged. Apparently, the legends talk about it. Triplet alphas sharing one true mate. It's rare, but it happens. And you're okay with that? Sharing? We've shared everything our entire lives, Cain said. Why would this be different? Because it's not a toy or a territory. It's a person. It's me. Exactly, Dante said quietly. It's you, and we'd rather share you than lose you. The words settled over me like a warm blanket, chasing away the last of the cold that had lived in my bones for so long. I'm not good at this, I admitted. Trusting people, letting them in. I died because I trusted the wrong people, and I don't know if I can do it again. Then don't trust us yet, Cain said. Just come with us. Give us a chance to prove we're different, that we see you, all of you, not just the Omega but Elias, the survivor, the fighter, the smart ass with fire in his veins and steel in his spine. I am pretty great, I said, and was rewarded with Ryker's delighted laughter. Dante held out his hand. Come home with us, please. I stared at his hand for a long moment. Thought about my father, hollow and grieving. Thought about the pack house that had never felt like home. Thought about the execution I'd avoided, the death I'd cheated, the second chance I'd been given for reasons I still didn't understand. And I thought about 3 alphas who'd traveled across territories to find me, who'd defended me, protected me, believed me when no one else did. Maybe fate wasn't something to fight. Maybe sometimes it was something to embrace. I took Dante's hand. His fingers closed around mine, warm and solid, and I felt it. The bond. A golden thread connecting us, connecting all 4 of us, thrumming with potential and promise and possibility. Okay, I whispered. Take me home. Ryker whooped, loud enough to make half the council members still lingering nearby jump. Cain's smile was small but genuine, transforming his entire face, and Dante squeezed my hand gently, his thumb brushing across my knuckles. Welcome home, Elias, he said, and for the first time in 2 lifetimes, I believed it. As we walked away from the pack house, one away from my past toward whatever future waited with these 3 impossible, wonderful alphas, I felt the fire in my chest settle. Not extinguished, never extinguished, just waiting. Because I was done being a victim, done being weak, done being afraid. I was Elias. I was an Omega with fire in his veins and 3 Alpha Kings at his side. And my story was just beginning. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed it, you'll definitely love the next one. It's even crazier and more intriguing than you can imagine. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned. The next story drops soon.